Hello everybody, and welcome to the E-Dre channel. I am back, it's been a while. I promised a few months ago that I would be consistently uploading videos, and I admit I have fallen off that train. But I am back, and I have some pretty big announcements to make. For one, it is time for us to welcome back the musical project, Act Tragic. As some of you may know, based on my earlier YouTube videos on this channel this year, Act Tragic was the musical duo that I was a part of from late 2022 all the way up until the end of 2024. At the end of 2024, for both creative and personal differences, we decided to split up the duo, and the future of Act Tragic kind of seemed up in the air. I wasn't sure what to do with it, and for the time being, it was a defunct project. To make up for that absence in my creativity, I did end up recording and releasing an acoustic solo album, E-Dre Peraza, that I put out back in May. Now, like I mentioned, that was a solo record under a different name in a way to kind of get some of that folky, acoustic, creative energy I had left after the breakup of Act Tragic out there, but under a different package and a different form, since ultimately I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the Act Tragic name. But starting this summer, I could happily announce that Act Tragic as a musical project is back. And as of September 5th, 2025, Act Tragic, now just a solo project, has released its latest album, Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad. The main motivation for me to bring the Act Tragic project back, even if it's a solo project now, was simply that it was a project that I poured my heart and soul into over the past 2 or so years. And even though it was a duo with a lot of contributions from both of us, the vast majority of these songs were songs that I wrote from a very emotional and important place to me. And even though I'm in a very emotionally different and mentally different spot now than I was, let's say, a year ago, let alone 2 years ago, Act Tragic remains the project that I've contributed to that I am by far the most proud of. Whether that be our albums Ramifications and In the Afterlife, or our EP we put out right at the end of our run as a duo, Take Me From This Place, I'm very proud of those bodies of work and the other recordings we had put together during those sessions, which have now been released on streaming on the deluxe editions of those said releases. The sound of Act Tragic had historically been a bit darker, a bit more folk inspired, even a little post-punk inspired, and had been definitely more mellow than some of the projects I had been in before, with a very brooding sense of delivery, both vocally and lyrically, in a lot of the songs. And in many ways, I was very representative of my mental state during the recording and writing of many of those tracks. However, with all that being said, the Act Tragic of today, the Act Tragic that recently released Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad, is now a solo act, a one-man band, you might be able to say. And furthermore, the sound of this project has altered quite a bit. I decided when bringing this project back this summer that I didn't want it to continue down the same dark path that it was on for our last 3 major releases. Now a solo act, I wanted it to represent where I'm at now, both mentally and emotionally and creatively. I wanted it to not only represent my overall mental state and general state of being, I also wanted it to accurately represent the type of content and music that I had been consuming over the past year or so, which has been quite different from some of the stuff that I may have been consuming a year ago or 2 years ago. Therefore, the process of making Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad was pretty different from the process of the past few releases. Not only is it the first record under the Act Tragic name where I have essentially recorded, produced, written, and pretty much done everything myself on this record, the process of making Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad greatly differed from what I was used to doing on the previous few Act Tragic releases. For one, recording as a solo artist meant that this was the first time in a long time that I had recorded an album with very lush and fully arranged instrumentals where I pretty much contributed all the recording myself. It's also the longest record I think I have ever recorded at 16 songs long, and arguably the most upbeat and energetic and optimistic record I feel like I have released in a long time as well. The album overall has a lot of influence from 90s pop rock to pop punk to alternative rock and alternative pop, with artists like Green Day, 21 Pilots, Waves, Keane, Phantom Planet, all playing a pretty big, important role in the overall influence that went into making this record, which is quite different from the more Bright Eyes and Modest Mouse inspired instrumentals and lyrics that I was going for on some of the past Act Tragic releases, so there is a pretty big change in tone here. And at this point, you might be wondering what is with the title, Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad, which I will go into. It centers loosely around a group of characters that I call the Squishy Squad. These characters include the leader, Mr. Strawberry, and his wife, Mrs. Octopus, as well as Zia, the beautiful cat that is the leader of the Squishy sector, and Booga, who is my beautiful dog, who is the leader of the Beef sector. And furthermore, there's also the characters Simon, who is a plushy donkey, and Sunny, who is a plushy avocado. If one thing's clear from just that itself is that this is a very different tone, a very different direction, and a very light-hearted way to go about writing an album, especially after some of the more darker and in-depth lyrics that I had written on past projects. But don't get it too twisted. I really do think that these characters, their story, and their relations with each other do play, in a weird way, a weird role with my mental health. They kind of act as guidances for me to be a better person and to expand my overall creativity and self overall. They are characters that radiate optimism and positivity, peace and love, and they represent a union of outcasts that ultimately have banded together to fight for positivity. If you want to get more into the story that I have written for each of the characters and how they are related to each other, I will link the blogger that I wrote the whole story on down below in the description, and I will see if I could try to find a way to link it in this video. If not, it's in the description. And one thing I do want to make clear is that going forward, Act Tragic isn't just back for one album. I plan on keeping this project alive and well into the future, currently with aspirations of keeping it a solo project for both creative and personal reasons. I might work with other musicians here and there, but I'm not going to bring anybody in as an official member or anything like that anytime soon. And you can expect some of these characters in the Squishy Squad to be expanded upon and at least mentioned or brought up in future releases. I've already come up with some plans on how to continue that. And generally, what's next with Act Tragic? Well, I'm going to keep making music. I already have a good set of songs that I'm starting to work on, that I started to work on more after the release of my latest album, but some of these songs actually date back a few years. Some of the themes I'm going to be touching on in my future releases is how I got to where I am now creatively, and kind of looking back fondly on my past projects, both solo and with local bands, and how that has shaped who I am now with my current state in music. And overall, I mentioned this, I think, earlier this year, but I treat music as a hobby. It's not something I make a lot of money off of. It's not something that I could sustain myself off of, but it is something that brings me great joy and great expression that has helped me through many tough times. And when I look back at songs I made, especially with some of those older Act Tragic releases, they bring me back to those moments, both positive and negative, and that is something that few forms of art have been able to do, especially ones that I've created. So you can expect more from this project in the near future, in the extended future, and for the foreseeable future. With all that being said, I will update the YouTube channel with a playlist with this video in it explaining what's going on, and then all the other videos as of right now are going to be the YouTube links to my new album, Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad. I also am going to keep the Act Tragic playlists separate. There's going to be one Act Tragic playlist of my content that I had released under Our Time as a Duo, and there will be a new one which will be created after the upload of this video that will be of all the videos and content I release as a solo artist under the Act Tragic name. With all that being said, I'm really excited to announce this stuff. It's been something I've been brewing for a long time. I know this video is a little late compared to when the album was released earlier this month, but I wanted to still put it out there and let you guys know that might not have seen on my threads or different forums or stuff like that it is out there. So yeah, please give Mr. Strawberry and the Squishy Squad a listen. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, either on Album of the Year. You can hop on and give it a rating. I'll put the link to that down below. Or you could comment on this video, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. It's a very different sound, so I expect a bit of differing opinions, but it was a very fun and energizing album to me. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. It was a lot of fun making the album, and I'm happy to share it with all of you, and I'm very happy to say that Act Tragic is back in full swing. Thank you guys. Have a great night.